It's been a while since I've played Rocket League. I remember why now.
I've noticed that every new release is much more fun to play than the games that have been out for years. Whether it's Splatoon, Splitgate, or Rocket League, they all follow this trend. I first played Rocket League back in 2017. I have come back to the game every year or two since then. I've noticed each time I come back to the game to stay where I was rank-wise, I have to learn a new mechanic to stay competitive. Back then, I was really good at ground play.
You should have seen how I handled those balls.
Aerials were rare at the time, so the entire game was ground play. I then came back 2 years later and was trash. Complete garbage. I hadn't really changed how I played, but the game left me behind. And what do you do when a game leaves you behind?
Cry.
This is shown most clearly by the fact that in 2016, the average time to become plat was 382 hours. Then in 2018, it was 431. In 2020, it took 670 on average. This shows a clear trend towards it taking more time to become a middle rank. I also noticed that over time, stuff that was once top rank exclusive does a bit of trickle down economics and falls all the way down to the lower ranks over time.
Well, this looks like a good drink. Oh no. They have flying cars now?
My point is that new techs and abilities will trickle down to the lower level players given enough time. This is not only because the way to do them are made more public, with tutorials and other online things, but also because they now have similar amounts of playtime to people who were champ years prior.
Except, this increasing playtime has pulled a full 180.
In Rocket League, the most recent findings I found said that the playtime to become plat went down from nearly 700 hours to 230. Why did this happen and how did it happen? That was the question that made me lose Trivial Pursuit last night, so I broke a few kneecaps to find out. You know what they say, you have to break a few legs to make an omelet.
So, as you can clearly see from the board behind me, there are two possibilities for why this trend has occurred.
First, the game went free to play in this time, leading to an influx of players who were less experienced, driving those higher skilled players up and taking their lower ranked spots. However, this has some problems. First, what if they smelled bad? Second, if this influx of new players reduced the game's overall skills, then the problem is solved, right? Except these new plat players are similar or better than the players who held the rank before.
So, there has to be another reason. There has to be something that can fill in the holes in this theory. So, I present to you, Theory 2!
Another factor that could have answered for why it required less time to get a higher rank could be that this was the rise of a lot of content around the game, or at least a major spike in its popularity. By the time the game reached that point, it went from a game I hadn't heard about in years to half of what my friends were talking about every lunch. So I think it pushed a lot of players to play more, play better, and along with the influx of new players, with almost a clean slate of playtime, led to a game where as soon as someone scores a goal, all you see in chat is what a save.
This community's so wholesome, even though they missed the save, they're still saying it was a great save.
The problem is skills come with time, so much time that despite the fact that players are much more mechanical now, you see aerials, flip resets, dicky wrecks, redirects, and more, these new players use these mechanics to defeat players like me who maybe don't have the best mechanics, but have good game sense and positioning from playing the game for years before that. So let's say that the increasing playtime is accurate to what happens in most games, and the time going down was because of all the surrounding changed variables.
Because I'm a scientist!
The rising playtime requirements to become half decent at the game is ridiculous. Spending hundreds of hours to get good at Funny Monkey Game is something I just can't stomach. So why does the high level skills, tips, and tricks trickle down over time? Because of this circle jerk of increasing playtime, because you can't leave the game you're currently playing, because the people who leave after the first few months, first few years slowly trickle down to the committed players, this means that given enough time, the difference between the highest rank and the second highest grows, while the difference between the second highest and the second lowest and all in between shrinks. People go for aerials in silver and get them in gold. Years ago, I would not see an aerial attempted unless we were going against a diamond or higher player. Don't get me wrong, high level play should require time and skills. However,
Is that a wave dash?
It's not fun to come back to a game that you were pretty damn good at and find out you dropped a rank, not from getting worse, but instead everyone else getting better. Fuck, even in non-competitive games like fucking Minecraft Bed Wars? Bed Wars, for those not in the cult, is a Minecraft minigame that has more committed players than Overwatch at this point, where your objective is simple. You and usually 7 other teams try to break each other's beds, and then kill the other players on that team. If the bed is there, you respawn. If not, not. However, I have memories of playing back in mid-2017. I then stopped playing about a year later. I came back 2 years later, everyone was speed bridging, block clutching, and sucking. So my friends started learning how to speed bridge, and the next day, over the course of 2 hours, I learned how to do it consistently.
2 fucking hours. 2 hours.
That was barely any time, and yet it still served as this barrier of entry. In the course of those 2 years I spent away, I did actually play a few random matches. I would see the amount of people speed bridging and think, fuck this. It's not even about the time it takes to get back into a game. It's about the mindset and the mental barriers. Seeing a skill that even if it is easy to acquire that looks difficult to learn is almost worse. This is because more people who actively play the game picked it up. Back when I first played, potions were unnecessary the majority of the time because you could just out PvP anyone. However, as people got better at PvP, as less bad players were still playing, forced out by all these perceived barriers, these pots as they were called became necessary breakpoints to end the sometimes endless fights between equally matched teams. This is the reason I don't want to play Splatoon again. I would love to get back into Splatoon. It's gotten its 3rd entry and I played the shit out of the first game, but I probably won't ever play it again. Not only because I haven't used my Switch in years, instead playing games like Tears of the Kingdom in the much superior 4K release, not only because I'm fairly sure Splatoon is the 2nd game I've ever heard as having a toxicity meta, but because I would probably suck. I mained the roller back when I played, and I haven't played a controller FPS in probably half a decade, and no one wants to be rolled while using a roller. So how do we fix this? This is why games get worse with time, but how can this be resolved? Well, we kinda saw the problem be partially solved by Rocket League. Releasing in a free-to-play model brought down the time required to become Plat. I use Plat for this because it's a rank new players aim for, because it's viewed as above average. No one wants an average cock. They want an above average cock. And what is ranked but a dick measuring contest? However, we still saw a lot of players need to grind their hours in practice to be able to pull off these high-level maneuvers. Instead of playing the game, many players spend hundreds of hours grinding aerials instead of hundreds of hours playing the game. I see this same pattern in games like CSGO, Siege, or even Overwatch.
You see, if you throw this at this angle, it'll bounce here, 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 and here. You see, it will end up here with half a second before it explodes.
But what we can learn from Overwatch and Rocket League is having good ways to practice in-game and making that fun is a good way to make grinding skills easier and more enjoyable. Though it does not solve the root problem, which is that as a game gets older, it becomes more and more difficult and less rewarding to climb in ranked. To a certain degree, this is probably unavoidable. Though if there is a constant influx of new players, we can see this playtime problem be solved.
Oh, I was just practicing how to whistle run.
I do believe the only way we can solve the new mechanics being necessary is by making them easier to practice. Because we don't want to see games with no skill expression. Unless you're Activision Blizzard and want your game to be utterly unplayable for some masochistic ass reason. But in reality, outside of carefully calculated community management and a good influx of content online, games will always experience this skill creep. It's basically unavoidable outside of making more new releases. I think the community's skill improving is a good thing, even if I don't think it's healthy for a game. Think of it like a banana. The reason they brown is the same reason they turn that golden yellow. They keep making themselves better and better until they end up becoming mush. This is what happens to a game over time. The community improves and improves until it's at its most fun, usually from a few months to a year in. Then they experience this decline, where even if the game itself is more balanced, more fun, it has created all of these barriers to entry that no one new wants to play the game anymore. Is that even a problem though? Do we want the game of all time? The one game we all want to play? I don't think it's healthy. Imagine if Minecraft, Overwatch, or Even Fortnite's momentum never stalled. Do you think we would have a good gaming space where one company owned the one game that we all played, that everyone wants to get better at? Monopolies are dangerous, and I'm planning to talk about that at length later. We need games to step out of the spotlight to give space to the next. Those who still like Rocket League or still like Overwatch can still play them. Well, actually, Overwatch players can't. But my point is, you can still play them, even as they get worse. Maybe someday they will return to greatness, maybe they won't. But one thing's for sure.
The next big multiplayer game, 2 years after its release, will still take hundreds of hours to become passable at. It's just the circle of life.